Can a shelter weighing less than 2 pounds and packing down to roughly the size of a Nalgene bottle actually be as awesome as it sounds? Let's find out. What's up guys, it's Eric from Late to the Game Outdoors, and today we are looking at the Nemo Spike one-person shelter. This is from Nemo's field line, which they did in partnership with First Light, and I'm gonna be honest, I've been really impressed with everything that I've tried from that partnership so far. So when I had the chance to pick up the redesigned Spike, I was cautiously optimistic. Pros: the thing is friggin' light. Honestly, the only way to think about getting a lighter shelter is to go with some sort of floorless option, and I hunt a lot here in Arizona, so I don't have these stones to go floorless out here. There are just too many crawling and slithering things that would love to snuggle up next to me in the night.
Those aren't pillows.
So if you want a full shelter with a floor, this is basically your smallest, lightest option. The other thing I put in the pro column is that it's surprisingly wide for a single person pup tent, at least at the head end, not the feet, and we'll get to that later. But I was able to fit my not small self on top of my tall, wide sleeping pad into that tent, and I still had space on the inside to stash my water bottle on one side, and I had my pistol, flashlight, and a few clothes stuffed on the other. I honestly didn't expect to have any room on either side of me. Plus, and this is a small thing that I've loved in all Nemo shelters that I've used, that little light diffusing pocket at the top is just awesome. It's like hauling in a lantern without having to devote any space or ounces to an actual lantern. Sadly, for me, that's kind of where the pro list ends. I desperately wanted to love this shelter. But after a January backcountry hunt out here in the desert, I just couldn't convince myself that the weight savings were worth it. Here's why. The setup is a pain. I'm sure after doing it a few times it would get quicker, but all the struts and the guy outs, if you're used to a more traditional freestanding tent, you're gonna spend a lot of time messing with tension on all the lines to try and get it as taut as it's supposed to be. And while we're talking about that, the tent comes from Nemo with 6 stakes, but the setup requires a minimum of 8. 10 if you want to run the optional side guy out lines. Yes, you could order a few more from Nemo, no big deal, but then you're adding ounces and you're cutting into your weight savings off of other potential tent options you could get from Nemo, making it even less worth it. Okay, once it's set up, that part's done, but here's where I just couldn't love it. It's a trekking pole supported tent. That's how they save a big chunk of the weight, but that means there's a trekking pole as the main support of the whole structure right in the middle of the doorway into your tent. That, coupled with the inherent size restrictions of this ultralight shelter, makes getting in and out of the thing a nightmare, especially if you're a big dude. Personally, I prefer to sit in the entry to my tent with my boots outside, zip up the vestibule, take my boots off, and then just spin on my butt and slide into my sleeping bag with my socks, never having to touch the dirt. That is virtually impossible in the Spike. If you try it, you'll surely find yourself contorting in all sorts of weird ways and putting unnecessary stress and pressure on the sides of the tent while you try to spin 180 degrees while also sliding your feet into your bag. It's a nightmare. The best solution I could find is to step out of your boots one at a time into the entryway of the tent and then try to spin into a plank sort of position while you slide your feet down into your bag. Don't forget to turn sideways so you don't run into the trekking pole, and then you close the vestibule, the door, and you flip back over into a sleeping position. It's weirder and more unnecessary than goat yoga.
We are going to take our cat-cow, so inhale and bring your forehead towards your pubic bone.
Now, once you're in there, the real issue that I knew I'd be keeping my eye on is condensation. They redesigned the Spike a little bit after the first version got some pretty nasty reviews for condensation issues. And listen, it's an ultralight single wall tent. I don't think any manufacturer knows how to completely eliminate condensation from forming in that kind of a setup. But the larger foot vent that they added and the 2-zipper configuration on the vestibule that's supposed to help mitigate that wasn't crazy effective, at least for me. I'm tall and I have big feet, which meant most of the foot side vent was covered. which also made for disproportionately cold feet, by the way. And then on the head end, the added height and the ability to vent the top of the vestibule on a rain-free night, it seemed like that actually helped a little bit, but not a ton. It was a warmer weekend in January here, so overnight lows were probably only in the low 40s, and I still woke up with a good amount of condensation, like from my waist down in the tent. So at least I didn't wake up with cold drops hitting me in the face, but I definitely had to vent the tent and leave it sitting in the sunshine for a couple hours to dry out before I could pack it up and get hiking. Okay, here's the deal. I don't want to just bash on the tent. I've been really impressed with Nemo in every other piece of gear I've used. I've had to use their warranty before, and their customer service is incredible. I also don't think that I'm just going to ditch this tent altogether, or that I couldn't recommend it for certain situations. Here's what I think could save this shelter. If you're a smaller person, this might be great for you. I think if my feet weren't huge and weren't pressed right against the foot vent, like if I were 6 inches shorter with normal feet, it probably would have really helped that condensation on the bottom half of the tent. Also, if I were less large, it probably wouldn't have felt as much like I was sliding into my own coffin. Second, because it's so light and small, I could see tossing this in my day pack for a couple of potential situations. If I was miles from the truck, hiking through elk country and a large thunderstorm blew in, which often happens in September in Arizona, this thing could be a great place to ride out a storm for an hour or two. It would also be nice to have as an, I don't think I'm going to spend the night out here, but I might kind of situation. Like if I get an animal down at last light or something happens and I end up just having to make a last minute call to stay through the night rather than hike through the dark, it'd be a great basic shelter to have in the pack. Third, there are some early season, remarkably warm hunts that I end up on here in Arizona. And on a lot of those hunts, I have no choice but to haul in every drop of water I plan to use. I can think of at least a couple mountain ranges that I pack into where the weight and space savings of this little guy would actually be worth a few of the discomforts that I've been complaining about this whole time. And on these warmer hunts, overnight condensation would probably be even less of an issue, so it might just work out. So, if any of those sound like they apply to you, the Spike might just be the perfect shelter for you. I have a buddy who loves this tent, and he's as hardcore of a backcountry guy as I've ever met, who has spent plenty of nights in plenty of different shelters. If you want to pick one up, go ahead and check the link in the description, and if you want to see my review of my new favorite shelter in the entire world, also from Nemo and First Light, check that out right over here. If you haven't already, please do me a favor and subscribe right down here. And until next time, stay safe, stay dry, and go deep.